Welcome to the Books Between Friends podcast.
3 lifelong friends,
one shared obsession.
Books.
From epic fantasy to page-turning thrillers.
We dive into the stories we love
And the ones we just can't stop talking about.
So take a seat,
Grab a drink,
and get cozy. Welcome back, friends. We're so excited to dive into our next book today. We will be doing a full recap of Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. If you didn't catch our episode on Fourth Wing, be sure to listen to that first, then join us for the sequel, Iron Flame.
So last episode was all about Fourth Wing, and this episode we are going to dive in to the beast that is known as Iron Flame, and we are very excited to discuss it with each other. We're excited to see what you all thought of Iron Flame as well. But first, I think a good segue to that would be to just completely mention how sad we are as a podcast that we did not mention a very important character in our Fourth Wing recap, which was Liam. Shame on all of us, I guess, is what the Fourth Wing community might say, because we know how beloved Liam is as a character. So I think that's a perfect segue to start our dive into Iron Flame. So let's all remember Liam.
No, it's crazy that we got carried away talking about so many other things and then just completely forgot him. That's insane.
Shame on us.
Okay, well, to start us off, first I'm going to say fair warning if you're listening to this. We're assuming that you've read all of Fourth Wing and all of Iron Flame, so there are going to be spoilers throughout this episode. So if you haven't listened to our first episode on the series, please go back and listen to that. We recapped all of Fourth Wing in that episode, and now we're going to talk about the second book in the Empyrean series, Iron Flame. So without further ado, let's dive in. This book starts out in Arisha, where Violet, Xaden, and the other marked ones who survived the Battle of Resin are taking refuge at Ryerson House. Violet barely survived being stabbed by a poisoned dagger by a venom because Xaden chose to take her to Brennan in Arisha, who's a mender. Only issue is Brennan was supposed to have been dead for 6 years. And on top of the shock of this news, Arisha isn't even supposed to exist anymore. It was burned down at the end of the Tyrish Rebellion 15 years ago. However, apparently the rebellion never actually ended. The rebels have been quietly rebuilding it for the past 15 years, and Ryerson House is still the base of the revolution. Xaden and the other leaders of the revolution are deciding whether or not Violet and the other cadets should return to Basgiath for graduation. So much of Violet's world has been turned upside down in the past few days. Everything she thought she knew about Xaden, the revolution, her family, the war, and even her country, Nevers, has all been a big fat lie. She now has to decide which side she's on, and whether or not to return to Basgiath, where they're not sure if they'll be welcomed back or killed on sight.
So I think it's Navarre, right?
I think we should probably just put a disclaimer out there and say, hey, listen, we love this book just as much as everyone else, but just like everyone else, we struggle with pronunciation, so we may not pronounce everything correctly. All right, so that's a summary of Iron Flame. Now we're going to go into some first impressions, and I'm going to get this conversation started. So, Iron Flame, I liked it. I think I liked this one a lot more than Fourth Wing, because you get a lot more of the political scheming in the background. You get introduced to the Flyers, right? Griffin Riders, which I thought was incredibly cool. As a fantasy lover, you get a lot of dragons, but you don't get as much griffins. And I feel in general, Violet just has some like really badass moments that kind of stick out more than in Fourth Wing, because she's coming into her own, so to speak. So those are my first impressions. Jen, Steph, what did y'all think?
I will say that when I first read it, I had a hard time getting into it. Now, at this point, I've already read it like twice, 3 times, listened to the audio like twice. So I've changed my mind quite a bit. But like in the beginning, I just could not get past Violet's like annoying monologue to herself about Xaden. Like, I understand she was really struggling with letting him back in. And, you know, even though she was in love with him, but didn't want to admit it. And so a lot of that was low-key annoying to me, and it was hard for me to get past. But man, I'm so glad that once you hit that point, it was about halfway through, like I just couldn't put it down anymore. Like it really picked up. I mean, Basgiath is a war college, where they're preparing you for war. And it just got to the point where it's like they were no longer trained for it. Everybody's world was turned upside down with like everybody finding out about everything that was going on and that Navarre was keeping secret. And so this book really just had so many things happen, so many questions came up. And the last chapter leaves you just screaming because of how much happens. So I cannot wait to get into this one.
Okay, so I would have to agree with Jen. Initially, when we first read this book, I was so annoyed with Violet. She was just getting on my nerves with the way she was holding back in her relationship with Xaden and giving him like such a hard time. I just felt like that was a little bit immature of her, considering Xaden is just doing his best with like a lot he has to carry on his shoulders in a really shitty situation. And I thought that she wasn't giving him the benefit of the doubt. And I honestly understood his reasoning for all the secrets that he was keeping from her. I think if she had reflected on it a little bit more, she would have understood that. But she really made it about her, which she kind of does a lot in this book. And that just like grinds my gears. However, once I went through my texts between me and Jen about this book and like started reflecting and like writing notes about the book for this episode, I started realizing like, okay, if I just like put myself in Violet's shoes, I just realized everything and everyone that I know anything about or thought I knew anything about is a huge lie. And she can't really take that out on anybody but Xaden, unfortunately. So, and she's also so young. She's like, what, 20 in this book? So if you look back on that and like consider all the different circumstances, she's doing her best too. So anyway, there's a lot of growth that happens in this book. I do warm up to her a lot more towards the end of the book.
Yeah, I would agree. Like I'm certainly not a Violet fan in the first. I feel like it's probably like the first half of the book, where it always has that inner monologue of her like, oh, I can't trust him, he lied to me, blah blah blah. And so yeah, wasn't a fan with
That's
that.
exactly
but
how I was reading those parts in my head.
I do think it marks a very clear divide into the first half and second half of the book. It's almost like a switch that Violet turned on in her head, and now we're focused on the second half of the book, which was a lot more enjoyable to read to me.
Yeah, and I think that's where she turns like super badass, like what Ethan was saying. Because in the second book, she has to face a lot of big decisions and a lot of real things that honestly are, life and death. And so she really becomes this heroine in the second half of the book and just like really looking out for everyone and trying to save everyone and just trying to be what everybody needs, which is a savior at that point, because nobody thinks that they're going to survive this. So now we're going to get into some highlights of the book that we thought were big key moments in Iron Flame. And so we cannot wait to share what we thought about each one of these and see if you guys agree with our thoughts. So after they decided to come back, they went back to Basgiath, War College for Marisha. And so the beginning of the book really kind of goes through the squad really navigating through their second year. Because I mean, even though they fought at Reston, everything is pretty much going back to normal. Like they're going back to college, going back to class. This is their second year there. And so now they have different things that they have to learn, like land navigation, how to fare under torture. And so Violet, she kind of goes through a lot when she gets back with having to face Dave's dad, Atos, because he's the one that kind of sent them there to die. Had everybody who was at Reston was being attacked. There was assassins after Violet. I mean, she had several run-ins with assassins. This is also to the time where we meet Sloane and Eric.
What stands out about this section for me is like, I think the biggest moment or scene is the return to Basgiath. Like that was so tense, So, and it was such a good scene. And it set the stage for like the rest of their second year, like everything is ramped up. And then also the people who let them back into Basgiath, how much do they know? Are they also keeping a lot more secrets? We know that they're keeping some secrets, obviously. So that's interesting,
Yeah, I was I would say that them coming back and then they were reading their names on the death poll and then they walked in and like Zayden being such a badass.
It
Like,
was
oh,
so crazy. Yeah.
that was like I can definitely picture that in my head whenever he just walks in. It was like, well, that's awkward. And having
Yeah.
everyone
Such
information.
a good scene.
Yes, that was really good. But after that, I felt like poor Violet just had to make a big decision on keeping a secret from her friends. Like, yes, she was annoying when it
Yeah.
came to Aiden, but when it came to her friends, like, I just felt really bad for her because it's like this huge secret. I mean, nobody
Right.
knows that in our life. Nobody knows that Wyvern exists. Like, nobody knows about that the Flyers are not the true enemy. And so she
Mhm.
needs to keep all of that from like everyone at Basgiath, but especially her friends who definitely
Yeah.
notice that she's being sus, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard to keep such a huge secret like that, especially from the people closest to you. And so that really caused some strain in her friendship relationships at school, which really sucks. Like I can think back to high school and having moments like that and how tough that is, on top of like a crazy war that you have to deal with.
Well, on top of being like targeted to be killed, like right off the bat after the first years came in, she was targeted by an assassin. And the only thing that saved her was the fact that one of her friends said she was Violet, and that's how she didn't die. So, I mean, she's like being targeted to be killed. She's holding secrets from her friends. I can't imagine not telling you guys something. Like, I immediately want to have a secret. Like, I have to tell somebody. I would be terrible at this. But I feel like the biggest thing for her once she did return, I mean, besides having to navigate through your second year and this war college, right? Was the new what was his title? Lord Command? No, that was a Lord Command. Commandant. The new commandant.
Oh my God.
He was
This guy. Words do not express what a piece of
Oh,
shit this guy is.
I think I have it, right?
Let's hear
The
it.
male, the male Professor Umbridge.
oh my god, yes.
Mm,
I love
absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah,
Oh my
right?
God.
Like, ugh, what a tool.
Just yeah. Yeah, just the biggest ick from this guy. And his dragon too. Like what is wrong with him? I was so curious like the history between his dragon and Taryn cuz Taryn was the one that took his eye out, but they didn't really get into that. Hopefully we'll hear more about that later.
Y'all, this brought to mind a certain theory that I've been hearing that I'm not like a huge fan of, but you
Oh
could
gosh.
obviously see how it could lean that way, right? So Varish's dragon, what color was he?
Orange?
Orange. Jack Barlow's dragon, what color was he?
orange. I've heard
Orange?
Brennan's dragon, what color is he?
orange.
So
Wait.
are we getting like a little bit of foreshadowing that Brennan could be a villain?
Yes.
Stop. No. No, 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 no. I do not accept.
I know. I've heard the theory though, and it kind of matches. I mean, everybody thinks that Brandon is kind of sus. And the fact that he's like the one,
What?
yes, that's what people have been saying. Okay, let's go into that theory later.
We'll talk about it. Yeah. Put a pin in that one.
But yeah, Barish is just one of those many people in Navarre that is trying to keep this secret hidden because I know there's a lot of opportunities that come up during briefing. What is it, battle brief? Where
Brief, yeah.
it was like leaks of parchment, that we're talking about. What were they talking about in these like because that happened like twice, right? Where something got leaked. Oh, that people weren't that Navarre wasn't taking people in, that they were getting attacked and they were being left behind. And
Oh
so
yeah.
the fact that they're not helping civilians out there and they're
Right.
not protecting the innocent, those things were getting leaked into Battle Brief. And so people like Barish and people like Markham were trying to keep them hidden in secret.
Yeah, they weren't actually talking about it in Battle Breeze, even though it was part of the communication.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just, the secret goes so deep to the point where like they were even thinking they were talking to Jasenia about like all of these tomes that were missing. And so they got to the point, and I really liked what Violet's dad said about history. He said it takes just one desperate generation to like change history, right?
Okay, here it is. Thank you, Google. Remember that folklore is passed from one generation to the next to teach us about our past. If we lose it, we lose the links to the past. It only takes one desperate generation to change history, even erase it.
That's what it was. I will say one thing that shocked me before I get into the other thing that I really want to talk about. One thing that really shocked me was when they revealed that Jack fucking Barlow.
Oh my God.
What did you guys think about that whenever that was revealed?
Dude, okay, so this is what I really like about Rebecca Yarros is that boy, can she do a freaking plot twist. Like, they were building this up, you know. Who was that mender that was mending him? What was it? Nolan. Yes. Something was going on with Nolan. He was too busy to like mend a bunch of the cadets like during their second year. And then come to find out he's been freaking mending Jack Barlow. And for what? What? Who wants him around?
I don't know if I was as shocked as everyone else, just because I was so focused on Venom and all of that storyline that and I know like that's where the shock comes from, like, because she's obviously putting our attention over here just so she can reveal something over here. But I was like, oh, that's nice. I want more of this now. Give me more of the Venom of the actual like storyline. I don't think I was initially as shocked to see him. I was like, oh, great. Now we have to deal with you again. Like that was more of my reaction.
Yeah. I thought leading up to the revelation that it was Jack Barlow, I thought they were mending a Venom. I figured like maybe they were like bringing Venom in to try to figure out how to cure them. And they were trying to like use a mender to do that. And that was my thought process the whole time. They're keeping it a secret because they've been keeping Venom a secret for centuries. But never would I have thought it was Jack Barlow, you know?
Whenever they talked about Nolan being so tired and whatnot, I really didn't think anything of it. Like, yeah, I'm sure there was something behind those secrets and I'm sure there was something else going on. But to me, like I wasn't focused on that at all. Kind of like how Ethan said about, Jack Barlow being revealed that he was alive. Like to me, whenever they mentioned Nolan, I was just kind of like, okay, yeah, he's firing. Like I didn't, obviously he became one of my least favorite people later. But I guess I didn't really put much thought.
No, the whole time I figured there was something there with Nolan and why the fuck is he so busy? Like he was always at the drop of a hat there for Violet and honestly a friend to Violet for most of her life until this point in time. So I thought it was super sus. I knew something was going on there. I didn't realize exactly what, but
honestly, I was really upset that he ended up betraying Violet later.
Oh God.
Like he even helped her and her squad get out of torture. And, the first time they were tortured. And so I was really upset whenever he drugged her and she got captured. But before we get into her being tortured, the reason she got caught by Barish, because, like I mentioned before, Barish was just making her life miserable and just like checking every little thing to try to catch her in a lie or anything. Because he was following the codex. And Violet and her squad, after finally telling them, which I was so happy, by the way, so happy that she finally told them all. Because like that was, I'm sure, a huge like weight off her shoulders. She was able to lean on them and they were able to help her. But they were trying to break into the archives to steal 2 journals from the original 6 writers because they were trying to figure out how to bring the wards up in Orisha. And so her and her friends break into the archives, which honestly, I felt like I was holding my breath the whole time I was reading that part.
Yes. Such an intense scene getting in there and they have like a finite amount of time to get out of there before they basically blow up. That's so crazy.
Yes. Which guys, like the person who ends up helping them is King Tari's son. He ends up entering the writer's quadrant. And so they end up stealing this journal. They barely get out just in time, which again, holding my breath the whole time, and only for her to get caught by Barish.
Really, really by Nolan. So yeah, huge betrayal.
Yes.
Yeah.
What did y'all think? The fact that Violet was seeing Liam while she was being tortured, because there were so many theories behind that, and then there's so many like thoughts behind the fact that Liam was coming to her while she was being tortured by Barish.
I feel like this might have something to do with her second signet. And like I like this theory isn't fully fleshed out, and we'll get more into theories later, but I think her second signet has something to do with time, the past, and knowledge of what happened in the past. And Liam obviously is no longer with us in this book. May he rest in peace. But, I feel like this might have something to do with her signet. Maybe this is evidence of it manifesting a little bit, sort of how later on we found out that her first signet, lightning wielding, manifested a little bit earlier than she realized.
Yeah, I think that's a solid theory just because, and it also, like, her lightning, right, happened when she was under duress. So it's also that same instance here where it's either like foreshadowing of her second signet, or it's just truly Rebecca Yarros throwing us off the scent, right? Like a red herring, because I think it could also very well just be like a very sweet nod toward a character that Rebecca Yarros knew everyone was going to love and knew that she was going to rip our hearts out when she, unalived this solid character. Now, to me, I get frustrated with the idea of like, what do you think is going to happen to you in this situation? Like, you have Xaden, who even all of these war leaders will say his signet is one of the most powerful and coveted. And then you have
Right.
Violet being a lightning wielder, and she has two dragons. One of them is the largest dragon ever, except for one other that's in the world. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Literally, there's no reason that anyone has to disagree with Violet or Xaden. Like, there's no reason. There's no argument there to be made for me. So that gets a little frustrating when you have these characters that are like, oh, I'm going to make your life miserable. Are you? I mean, you can for maybe 5 minutes and then you're going to be gone.
I think this is also one instant where, to me, this is the turning point for Violet turning into the freaking badass that she is, because not only did she withstand torture, she gave up zero secrets.
She did not break at all.
Her body was broken over and over and over again. I mean, he would torture her, mend her, torture her, and mend her. And it wasn't like
day after day.
He was breaking her bones. And so for her to like just withstand that and still hold all these secrets in, because Brad, I would have cracked at the first moment. Like the minute I was like, okay, I'll tell you everything.
It's over. Yeah. I thought it was interesting to like, because, we know that she has this condition where she's like in chronic pain all the time and her bones easily break, or she's like easily hurt. But, I feel like this was an interesting way to position it as like kind of a superpower. Like, she is not a stranger to pain. She can handle it and move on as if it's not happening. And she does this thing where it's almost like shielding, where she shields the feelings of pain, which is huge. Like, it's part of her strength. It's part of her power.
I mean, honestly, I think the whole connection to Liam, I think that's a too obvious thing. And I don't think that's going to be her second signet. I think it's too obvious. So I don't think that's going to be it. But before we get into how wonderful Xaden is, because of course, like, this is where I fall in love with him all over again. I think this is a turning point for Dane as well. I think Dane finally kind of redeemed himself after what happened with Preston, because he's a memory reader. And so Varys brings him in because obviously torture is not working. Violet is giving nothing up. And so brings him in, and Dane, thank goodness, because honestly, there was a point there where he was mad at her for keeping secrets from him. And I thought that he was going to turn on her again. But he redeems himself and like stabs Varys. And that's the point where finally Xaden comes in and saves her, because I think it was about to be too late. Like, I think he was getting ready to kill her because he was getting nothing out of her. That, to me, Dane got redemption. I know a lot of people still hate him, but to me, I think he got redemption.
I would call it a mini redemption. So I was really happy that after reading her memories, on orders from Varys to do so, he did the right thing. He read all her memories and he decided that Varys was on the wrong side of things and he saved her. If it hadn't been for Dane in that moment, of course, Xaden was on his way, but who knows what could have happened. So that moment was huge. It was pivotal for Dane in his character arc, but I think he still has some work to do at this point to fully redeem himself.
Yes, I would agree. I also think that he's like, man, I just did this solid for you. Like, it probably doesn't think that, but almost has that sense of entitlement later on in the book. Like, well, I did this for you. Why don't you trust me yet? Right? Like, he doesn't realize that there's still work to be done to restore that relationship. So yeah, I was really happy with Dane because I think Dane is a solid character. Like, I really do like Dane. I didn't like him much in Fourth Wing, right? But I love a good redemption arc.
So one of the things I mentioned earlier about why I do love this book so much is because, Violet showing off how much of a badass she is and just kind of getting more into the story of, the war and just kind of corrupt politicians. But what I didn't mention is how much Zayden becomes more of my favorite. Like I already love him in Fourth Wing. Like he is actually one of my favorite MMCs in most of the books that I've read. Like if I can go back and think, okay, out of all the fantasy books I've read, Zayden is probably my favorite male character. Like he's my favorite. And when he goes and saves Violet, I was melting inside and just giggling like a little girl because I was so happy and so giddy that he finally confessed because they were back and forth on like admitting their love for each other. And so I was so happy when he finally just had this huge confession to her. And so he says, I'm sorry if you expect me to do the noble thing. I warned you. I'm not sweet or soft or kind, and you fell anyway. This is what you get, Violet, me. The good, the bad, the unforgivable, all of it. I am yours. His arm wraps around the small of my back, holding me steady and close. Want to know something true, something real? I love you. I'm in love with you. I have been since the night snow fell in your hair and you kissed me for the first time. I'm grateful my life is tied to yours because it means I won't have to face the day without you in it. My heart only beats as long as yours does. And when you die, I'll meet Malik at your side. It's a damn good thing that you love me too, because you're stuck with me in this life and every other that could possibly come. And you're like, ooh,
Full body chill.
somebody just like pouring their freaking heart out for you. I mean, holy shit. I was like, yes, Satan, yes, finally.
Love that journey for you. Love it.
So they like break her out and they're about to go back to Orisha. But then was it Violet who decided, like, no, she wants to give all the rest of the cadets a chance to make their own choice. So I think this was like a really huge moment for her and her character to show that she just wants everyone to know the truth. Like, she wants everyone to be very clear about what's going on and like make their own choices based on all of the facts, right?
I loved that, honestly. Like, I was really happy that she did that because I know that she struggled with it in the beginning, whether or not she should share that with her friends. And the fact that she was giving everyone a chance to live pretty much and to join the revolution to me was amazing. And so that really kind of turns into the second point of the book where they go to Orisha, the flyers who do decide to join them, or the cadets who do decide to join them go with her. And so that's kind of where all of this really starts taking off is when they fly to Orisha and they go there and shit gets real, like real, once they get there. And at this point, like I couldn't stop reading it. I think I like hours into just trying to finish the second half of the book because it was that good.
Yeah, totally.
So
I would say this is like the turning point in the book. This is where we get into like part 2 of the book.
Yes, I would totally agree. It's very like the tone is very different from the first half. The first half is pretty much exposition just to get to this point here, and then from here to your point, Jen. Like I had a hard time putting this down. It was so fast paced because at this point I was angry. I was like, well, they've been lying to you this whole time, and now is finally the time that they have been allowed to act, and everything just shoots off from here, very fast paced.
that's why I think it's like now they're in the middle of war. Like, yeah, they just came from a college where they were trying to prepare for this war. No, now they're in the middle of it, making these big decisions. And now Violet dives even more into trying to raise the wars in Orisha because she wants everybody there to be protected, everybody that she loves to be protected. And so one of the things that I know she was really like headstrong about was trying to get the Luminary, which was going to help them build weapons that, are going to help defend themselves against the Venom. And that Luminary was actually at a different palace where they were asking for Violet to wield her power as show for them to get this luminary. And so that's kind of where the second part of the book kind of jumps into. What did you guys think about that?
The questing, like to get the luminary.
Yeah.
That's probably one of my favorite parts of the book, honestly. Like I love that whole journey, that quest to actually get the luminary. They have to travel to this new place that we haven't read about before. And the descriptions of everything, you can tell it's very different. When I was picturing it in my head, it was very like the kingdom that Pedro Pascal's character is from in Game of Thrones, like very Middle Eastern kind of.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's what I pictured at least. And you start getting into the flyers, right, with Kat, how they can also wield and their different abilities as well. Like it was all the history with Kat and Xaden and everything that we get introduced to. So that's one of my favorite parts of the book, if not my favorite.
Yeah.
I do love that we get into who the Flyers are, because before we thought they were enemies, and they're also trying to fend for themselves and stay alive. I love whenever they explain their college compared to Best Buy.
That was such a funny moment for me when she was realizing that, like, why is Basgiath so cruel? Why do they allow the cadets to kill each other, like, haphazardly? Why are all of their trials during school a potential death sentence?
Yeah, why is everything so high stakes? Yeah.
Right. And I feel like maybe as we're growing up, we have these moments where we realize, like, everything we thought was just, like, normal isn't really, or you start to question things that you grew up with and realize, like, oh, that's kind of fucked up, And so that was such a good moment for Violet to realize, I guess we don't have to just willy-nilly kill cadets while they're training for war.
Yeah, there really is a different way this could be done.
Right.
I think we can all relate to that.
Totally.
Yes, being at this palace, Takaris' palace. I mean, I cannot believe he tricked her into wielding her power by having to kill a freaking Venom in front of all of these people. I mean, potentially that could have gone so wrong. And he was over here like, oh, just swinging your power by killing Venom. Like, no, dude, this Venom can drain us all. And you're over here just playing with this thing? Like, that to me was ridiculous.
Totally. He's such an interesting character to me, to Karis. Like, and Ethan, I was also picturing his palace and this land very similarly to you. I'm picturing like hot, summery, like maybe, closer to a beach or something like that. And just like this excess, the way they described his palace, it sounds beautiful. It sounds airy. It's luxurious. It's like not a fortress like Basgiath, So the world in this book really opens up and we start to get to know other parts of this world. And Takaris is just like a product of his surroundings. Like he obviously grew up in these lavish surroundings and, playing around with like lesser people just for entertainment, And so the fact that he didn't even think just, locking up Venom in an armoire just for entertainment could go seriously wrong. Like everybody could fucking die. The fact that he didn't even stop to think about that potentially being the outcome of this little game of his is just so interesting, because he's still an ally to Orisha and Tyrandor and the Revolution, but he's doing things like this still. And Xaden didn't even want her to agree to this because he knew his character was, what's the word? I don't know, a little nonchalant and blasé about her and her life. And of course, Xaden really cares about her, so he doesn't want to subject her to these kind of games.
Thankfully, Violet is Violet and kills Venom with the help of her sister Mira, who actually produced her own wards at the time, I thought was really cool, because I mean that it just means that their powers just keep growing. But after finally getting the Luminary, what part of the deal that Brendan struck with Takaris was like taking the Flyers with them. So now we get into this part of the book where the Flyers and the cadets have to work together. I mean, two people who have been enemies forever, like have to learn how to get along and have to learn how to train together and have to learn how to pretty much work together to kill the common enemy, which is the venom. And so to me, the most interesting part was the dynamic between Kat and Violet, because it come to find out that Kat was actually engaged to Zayden, and Violet just loses it. I mean, seeing her jealous side and literally almost killing Kat, like that was entertaining as hell to me.
Okay, this is probably like the peak of my annoyance with Violet at this point in the story because of how she let Kat get under her skin. But also, we later find out that Kat's signet is to be able to play with people's emotions and amplify their emotions. But at the same time, we have to remember if that emotion wasn't there, even in a small part to begin with, she would have nothing to play with. So she just amplified her jealousy. So yes, I was super annoyed with Violet, but again, upon reflecting about the book and remembering that Violet's like 20 at this point, maybe 21, 20, she's young. So obviously jealousy is a little bit of like an immature emotion that you feel when you're in a romantic relationship. But it was so interesting to see how Kat and Violet's dynamic kind of really came to a head in this book.
I love a well-placed bitchy character, and that is Kat. I love her character. I do. Like, sure, I can get annoyed with her, but at the same time, I'm secretly rooting for her. And I love her signet, her ability to manipulate people's emotions and play with them almost gives me like the image of like a Black Widow spider sitting in the corner, right? Like she's just spinning her web. And I think it's fantastic because that it doesn't seem that it could be that big of a deal, but honestly, that signet or that ability has such potential on what it could do to people, and the banter that Violet and Kat have with each other, I think is just hilarious.
I really do too, actually. Like whenever I think about Kat and Violet, I like her bitchy side, and I say that probably because I was a little bitchy in high school. So
What?
You know what, Jen?
This is
When I
brand new
first met
information.
you, I think it was the very first time I met you. Like one of the first things you told me about yourself is like, I'm a bitch. It's cringy now, but like, yeah, you like really prided yourself on that.
Yes, you sure did. It was like a badge that you would wear, your badge of honor.
Yeah, you know what? And it's like, if you think about it, we were about the same age at the time. And so like these characters are about college age. They're still coming into themselves. They're still getting over their immaturities and insecurities.
we haven't really mentioned just how funny Taryn and Darna are with Violet. But when she was having all these moments of insecurity, like I loved when Taryn was like, "Get a hold of yourself."
Snap
Their
at him.
dynamic is so funny. I love Taryn.
Yeah. Their dynamic is funny, but between Andarna and Taryn together, like when they banter back and forth, that's pretty hilarious.
Those are some of my favorite moments when they're just like all bickering back and forth and Andarna's just being, a little adolescent and all the emotional things that come with being an adolescent. It's so funny.
When Taryn tells her, "We don't eat our allies."
Like fish are friends, not food.
So funny.
Oh man, so funny, man.
All right, that's it for part 1 of this episode on Iron Flame. We'll continue this conversation in part 2 of Iron Flame. Be sure to join us.
And that's a wrap for Books Between Friends today. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next chapter.